Well, another day, another transfer going into the transfer portal. There's actually two transfers going into the transfer portal from Pitt yesterday. And while we probably can't spend or won't spend 20 minutes talking about Israel Polk and Cole Mitchell and what the losses of those two players mean for Pitt, there's plenty to discuss, though, on those guys going into the transfer portal. What the wide receiver room looks like right now after Israel Polk left, and what the tight end room looks like right now after Cole Mitchell left. And granted, you might look at both of those situations and say, a redshirt junior who never played and a redshirt freshman who caught one pass last year, I'm not sure that's going to have a big impact on the rooms. And you're right, but it's still a good little gateway to talk about the wide receiver position and the tight end position as we move forward here. And it's kind of what we do whenever guys go into the transfer portal. And there's going to be more guys going into the transfer portal. I think the portal closes next Tuesday, actually, a week from today is when it closes. And remember, that's sort of that's when the entrance to the portal closes. Guys can still leave the portal. It's like they're not going to lock you in the mall overnight. They still want you to leave at closing hours. They still want you to leave, but they're going to make sure that nobody else comes in at closing hours. And I think they sort of set up the rules that way, that the transfer portal closes for people to enter the portal. But once you're in, you can leave at any point. You're not sort of bound to, it's April 30th. You're not allowed to leave the portal now. It's not that's not the way it works. And I think they set those rules up so the coaches can have some sense of what they've got on their roster, who's going to leave. Okay, we know that after April 30th, everybody who's still on the roster is still going to be here. You can kind of count on that, and you can build your roster accordingly and move forward accordingly. So I think that's why they do it. So we got another week of the transfer portal being open. I suspect we'll see more Pitt players going into the transfer portal for reasons we'll talk about in a little bit related to the scholarship board and the scholarship roster. So we'll see more going in, and my guess is that the guys we see going in will be sort of reminiscent or along the same lines as some of the guys we're talking about today. Obviously, there were some big, high-profile transfers at the beginning of the portal, the post-spring transfer portal period. Deion Hayes and Solomon Shields, most notably. Hayes committed to Colorado over the weekend. We talked about that yesterday, and then DeShields committed to Texas A&M yesterday, so he's off the board to A&M. Certainly going to do well, on the NIL front with going to Texas A&M, and I think he'll actually play well. I think he's a really good player. I think there's been some mixed opinions about Solomon DeShields. I think he's really good. I think he would have been really good at Pitt, and I think he'll do really well at Texas A&M. And, of course, good luck to him. But we talked about those departures when they went in to the portal. But on the flip side, I don't know if I would say Christian Bayer because he's played. He's an experienced player. He's been on the field for Pitt. But, Antonio Kamen, the redshirt freshman defensive end, never played. And so you lose these guys like an Israel Polk or an Antonio Kamen or, even an Addison Copeland who went in after, the season ended, or, Cole Mitchell, some of these veteran guys who never played. You kind of look at it like you don't really know what you're losing there. Now, maybe they go somewhere else and have a great career, but you don't really know what you're losing because you never really actually got to see them play. But it's still worthwhile to have a conversation about the wide receiver position. It's still worthwhile to have a conversation about the tight end position in the light of two guys moving on. So let's talk about those spots. Let's talk about the transfers. Let's talk about the latest updated scholarship numbers. Let's talk about what Pitt needs out of the transfer portal. We spent so much time talking about guys going to the portal. Let's talk about what Pitt needs coming out of the portal and everything else that comes up here on the Morning Pitt, the Tuesday edition on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So a little peek behind the curtain here, a little inside baseball on the Morning Pitt, or about the Morning Pitt. We recorded these things and record just one bulk thing. I just recorded the intro. I paused a little bit for the intro music, and now I'm recording this portion. And we just knock it all out in one chunk. Every now and then you might see a little edit where we had to break something up or re-record something. Some of those record scratch moments. But for the most part, the vast majority of these Morning Pitt episodes, we record in one giant chunk. And then we get back, go back and edit it and add in the music and the opening and the closing and cut off the, beginning, whatever. And sometimes, very rarely, not very often, but very rarely, it's maybe less than 5 times, I'll go in and edit and find something very, very strange about the audio or very, very strange about the video that I just look at it and I'm like, I can't release this. This is a terrible product. Now, I mean, to say nothing of the content, this is a terrible product. Nobody would watch this. This is not good. And then I have to go back and re-record it, and I hate that. Well, that's the case today. This is what you're watching, hopefully, is the re-recording, because we recorded today's Morning Pitt and then went in to edit it, and somehow the length of the video was still ended up being 23 minutes or something like that, but the audio was all sped up. It was talking in high speed, and somehow it still ended at the same time. It was the most bizarre thing. Sometimes phrases would be repeated. It was almost like Max Headroom type of stuff. The end result, the ultimate story, is that I have to re-record this, and so it'll never be as good as that one was, but so it goes. You want to actually hear me not talking in a chipmunk voice, occasionally repeating phrases like a Max Headroom. So what are you going to do? But at least I have my thoughts clear. I've already gone through it once, talking about what I think about Israel Polk and Cole Mitchell. So this should be well rehearsed and well practiced. I've really got my thoughts. My thoughts on Cole Mitchell and Israel Polk are really at the forefront of my mind, because I've already sort of processed them. It's always good to have that kind of sounding board, and that's what I've got. No, but Polk and Mitchell, Polk played in like 3 or 4 games last season. He was targeted maybe 3 times. I think he caught 1 pass for 14 yards in the loss at Duke, season-ending game. And he had a really interesting recruitment. I think when it came down to it, he was a really late ad, right around the same time that Pitt added Ty Diefenbach, and they were 2 guys that are connected. I think they were, Pitt found one through the other. I forget which order it went. Frank Cignetti needed a quarterback after he lost Kenny Minchie to a decommitment to Notre Dame, and a decommitment and a flip to Notre Dame, and so he got turned on to Ty Diefenbach in California, and I think one connection led to another and led him to Israel Polk, who ended up committing to Pitt and enrolling like 2 weeks later. He enrolled in January last year. And I'm going to be honest, I'll be completely honest, and my expectations weren't high for Israel Polk, that he, a late offer like that, somebody who's still sort of hanging around out there, even though he was really productive. He was arguably the most productive receiver on a very, very good team, one of the top teams in the country. I think the number 1 high school team in the country. Even though he was really good like that, almost sort of because he was so productive, for him to have like sort of a limited offer sheet like he had late in the process to still be available in December of his senior year sort of raises some red flags, and Pitt ended up being his best offer, and he committed and enrolled in January, but my expectations weren't very high because of what his profile was as a recruit. But it was interesting because as he went through spring camp last year and then training camp last August, I heard a lot of good things. Like a lot of people that I think would not, people that I trust to tell me if somebody's not really anything special, were impressed. They were surprised. They were surprised with what they had seen from Israel Polk. And I think you knew that out of that 4-man wide receiver class in the 2023 recruiting class, where it was, Izzy Polk, and it was Kenny Johnson and Zion Fowler and Lamar Seymour, you knew not all 4 of those guys were going to last for 5 years. Somebody was going to transfer. I mean, that's a big class, and it's almost sort of inevitable that somebody's going to go. And you knew, I think, that Kenny Johnson was the top guy, and he, I think he showed that. He played last year. He scored that kick return touchdown, and I think showed some promise in his playing time. The other 3 redshirted, and there were positive reviews on all 3 of them, really. I think the coaches were excited about all 3 of them. They made plays and did well in practice. And Polk right there among them. He wasn't the biggest guy, but it seems like he was capable of making plays. But, given where he was, apparently what he perceived from the depth chart, he decided to move on and go into the transfer portal and find a new home. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes and has a productive career somewhere. The wide receiver position is just interesting, though, because that takes them down to 11 scholarship wide receivers. That includes Jake McConaughey, who went on scholarship last year after being a walk-on. I still feel like this wide receiver group needs somebody at the top, needs like a big, wide receiver 1. And I'm not sure that I really see that guy on the roster. I think for the last 8 games or so last year, they had pretty close to that with Bub Means. The Miami game at the end of the 2022 season, they had that with Jared Wayne. But a consistent wide receiver one, the big-time playmaker. Not sure that they've really had that. I mean, they haven't had it, I think, since Jordan Addison, and I'm not sure that I see that on this team. I think there are good players on this team. I mean, if you've watched these videos, I am as high on Konate Mumfield as anybody. I think he's a really good player. I think he's got a lot of value, and he's going to make a lot of plays and help you win games. But I'm not sure if he's a number one wide receiver, for whatever that means, Like Kenny Johnson, I think it's pretty clear from how they used him in the spring game, where they force-fed him a ton of targets. I think that's probably going to be what his role looks like this year. The ball is going to go to him a lot, but is he that legit big-time number one wide receiver? Maybe he ends up being that, but I'm not sure that he's shown it just yet. And so, I don't want to go so far as to call this wide receiver group, like pedestrian. I think that's overstating it, but I'm still looking for that highlight splash play kind of guy. They added the 2 transfers in Raphael Williams and Sincere Lee, both Western Carolina guys. And that's cool. They're both very fast. They're athletic. They obviously have a lot of experience and a lot of production in this offense, so that helps. But, given their size, I'm just not sure if I see them in that role. So Pitt it's tough because, we've seen them making contact and pursuing some wide receivers in the transfer portal, but I just don't know if they're going to get that guy, that number one wide receiver. And so they kind of have what they have, and the scheme is supposed to get guys open and create opportunities to make plays, and maybe that's how it'll work out, but I don't know if I can rely on that. I don't know if you can rely on that when you're still looking for that talent level that sort of takes the top off. And so the wide receiver position kind of is what it is. I don't think Israel Polk really changes the complexion of that situation all that much, at least not for this year. Maybe, in 2025 or beyond he does, but I don't think he changes too much for this year. And likewise with Cole Mitchell. Cole Mitchell is a redshirt junior, and it's not a huge tight end room. It's 4 scholarship guys now with Mitchell gone. Of course, Gavin Bartholomew and Jake Overman are seniors. Jake Renda is a redshirt junior. And Malachi Thomas is a freshman. Mitchell had an interesting recruitment as well, if you recall. He was in the recruiting class of 2021. So he graduated from high school in 2021. I think his fall season in 2020 was canceled due to COVID. I think he was going to have a spring season, but he ended up having mono, so he never played. Or maybe he didn't play his junior year because he had mono. Whatever it worked out to, he was just really not getting recruited. So his plan was to go to IMG Academy in Bradenton, basically reclassify, do an extra year, post-grad year, whatever it would have been called, and go there for a year and join the recruiting class of 2022 and hope that IMG could get him the exposure he wanted and was hoping for and give him a better opportunity. So that was the plan. And in June of 2021, so before he left to go to IMG, he came out to Pitt to go to Pitt's prospect camp. And while he was there, somehow, what I heard, it was one of the most physical performances by anybody in Pitt's prospect camp. Now, I don't know what counts as a physical performance in a shorts and underwear or shorts and T-shirts camp, but apparently he was really physical. He impressed the coaches. He impressed Tim Salem. 2 weeks later, they brought him back for an official visit and said, look, you have a scholarship offer, but we want you to come now. We want you to come in 2021. We don't want to wait until 2022. We might not have room for you in 2022. We've got room for you right now. Come join the class. So they ended up signing 3 tight ends that year: Gavin Bartholomew, Jake Renda, and Cole Mitchell. Bartholomew obviously has been really good. Renda has been up and down. Mitchell has never played a single snap on the field. He's never gone on the field. Not for special teams, definitely not for offense, nothing. And so here he is entering his 4th season and probably doesn't see much of a role for himself. I want to say, I don't have the I have the depth chart or the draft chart here of when the tight ends got drafted. Well, he wasn't the last one drafted. The seniors obviously got passed around or got selected by the coaches. But of the underclassmen tight ends, Jake Renda was the first one taken. Josh Altsman, a walk-on, went, and then Cole Mitchell. And then Adam Howenitz who was also a walk-on. So Mitchell went behind one walk-on, ahead of another. And, I mean, that sort of, the writing's on the wall there. You know what I mean? Like, you're probably not going to play. So you go looking for another opportunity. Tight end will be interesting to watch this year, though. A lot of what we heard coming out of spring camp, talking to different people, is that the tight ends are really moving around a lot. Not just lining up in line, but they're really playing in a lot of different spots. But I think some of that is related to who it is. Like Jake Overman, the transfer from Oregon State, I think is going to be in line probably all the time. Jake Renda, the other Jake, the redshirt junior, is probably going to be out wide all the time, almost playing like a big receiver. And then Gavin Bartholomew is sort of right in between the two Jakes. You know what I mean? You send one Jake this way and one Jake that way, and you've got Gavin right in the middle. And he lines up outside like Jake Renda sometimes. He lines up in line like Jake Overman sometimes. He lines up in the slot. He lines up in, H-back, fullback type of stuff. I think they're going to move Gavin Bartholomew all over the field and try to find good matchups and get him the ball. The only thing about the tight ends, and I don't know if Cole Mitchell really changes the equation here much at all, but with Bartholomew, Overman, and Brenda, I mean, you've got three guys who you can play, so that's good. You're kind of deep, except you're only sort of too deep at that outside tight end position where you have Renda and Bartholomew. You're like too deep at the inline position where you have Overman and Bartholomew. You know what I mean? You have Bartholomew, you can play in the slot as well. So you can you could survive an injury if you have an injury there. Ideally, it wouldn't be to Gavin Bartholomew. I mean, you don't want anybody to get hurt, but ideally, Gavin Bartholomew is definitely the one who stays healthy. But you are a little bit thin there with 4 scholarship players, one of which is Malachi Thomas, the freshman. So, tight end situation, I could see them keeping an eye on a tight end. I don't know who they would really get or what they would be able to bring in. It would probably be something along the lines of like a Malcolm Epps type, who you just maybe knows he's coming in to be a backup, and just kind of plays an occasional role and largely provides depth in case you need somebody. So that's sort of where that now, I mean, they're going to need to restock pretty soon because Overman and Bartholomew will be out of eligibility this year. Although Bartholomew, he'll be out too. Overman might be able to come back as a super senior, I guess. But realistically, I think both of those guys are seniors. Jake Renda's a redshirt junior, and then Malachi Thomas is a freshman. So you're going to need more tight end help from the portal for next season, for 2025, and from the high school ranks as well. Or you're going to have to restock, or else that position is going to get really thin and really scary, even thinner and scarier than it's been for the past 10 years. So that's where they stand there. All these latest instances of attrition, Israel Polk and Cole Mitchell, by our count, puts them at 86 projected scholarship players, or projected scholarships accounted for in the 2024 season. That includes a few guys who were walk-ons and went on scholarship last year, and so you always kind of pencil those guys in for scholarships the next year. You never know when one might not get renewed. But I think, like I said, over the next week, until the portal closes, I think you'll see more guys like this probably going to the portal. I don't know if there are going to be any other big names or anything like that. You're always kind of keeping an eye on stuff, and we probably all have our own definitions of what a big name really is, but I don't think there'll be anything like that. I just think you'll see more guys who look at the depth chart and say, I'm just not in the mix here. And the blue gold draft, that sends the message pretty strong, but I don't even know if you need that. I don't even know if you need the players drafting other players ahead of you. I don't even know if you need the coaches saying to you, hey, you're not going to play here. I mean, you see what kind of reps you get in practice. If you're practicing with the first and second team or the third and fourth team or something below that. And so, you look at the situation, and I think if you're a player, you can probably get a sense of where you stand. Unless you're really oblivious to things or trying to bury your head in the sand, I think you know what's up. And so if you feel like you can get a better opportunity elsewhere, then it's worthwhile to go. And I think they'll have a few more guys probably go. I mean, is my guess. That's not some wink, wink, nod, nod. I know these guys are going. That's just playing the odds on what the reality of college football is. Guys who want to play and don't think they're going to play go somewhere that they think they can play. So we'll keep you posted on that. There was one other bit of transfer news yesterday that I got to mention just because, I mean, it cracks me up. It's not the most ridiculous transfer story I've ever seen. It's up there. But the reality is, I mean, that is a goalpost that keeps moving. That's a finish line that keeps moving of the most ridiculous transfer stories. But it's our old friend Henry Parrish. Remember Henry Parrish, the running back from Miami? Miami grew up in Miami, committed to Pitt in the summer of 2019. He was part of the 2020 recruiting class. And at the time he committed, Pitt had 2 running backs committed in that class, Henry Parrish and Israel Abanikanda. Parrish got off to a huge start to his senior season, decommitted from Pitt, ended up signing with Ole Miss, played with Ole Miss for 2 seasons, where he scored, I think, I had his stats pulled up. I had him pulled up for the last episode of this podcast when I recorded this. Scored 5 touchdowns in 2 seasons at Ole Miss, transferred to Miami, played at Miami the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023, where he lost to Pitt in 2022. Never rushed for more than 625 yards, scored a total of 10 rushing touchdowns at Miami, went back into the transfer portal, and he is transferring to Ole Miss. Henry Parrish, Ole Miss running back, is transferring to Ole Miss. This is one of the first. I mean, I know like we've seen the Caden Proctor thing where, he's at Alabama, he transfers to Iowa, he transfers back to Alabama. But like, this was a guy who was like 2 years, gone for 2 years, and says, I want to go back to Ole Miss after spending 2 years at Miami. And it's funny to think about like the 2 paths, right, of Israel Abanikanda and Henry Parrish and how they diverged. I mean, they were both on the same path to play at Pitt, and then they diverged, and Parrish went his way and Abanikanda went his way. And in the time since those paths diverged, Israel Abanikanda has broken Tony Dorsett record, which is nothing to sneeze at, led the country in rushing touchdowns, and got drafted by the Jets. Henry Parrish is transferring back to Ole Miss, his second transfer after going to college. Now, I don't say that, and somebody said it on Twitter, like, oh, you're really taking delight in Henry Parrish's misfortune or something like that. First of all, I'm not entirely sure that it's Henry Parrish's misfortune. I'll come back to Henry Parrish's misfortune. I'll come back to that in a second. But I'm not really making light of it. And I don't know what Henry Parrish's career would have been if he had gone to Pitt. I don't know what Israel Abanikanda's career would have been if Henry Parrish had gone to Pitt. Those 2 storylines may have played out very differently if those guys had both ended up at Pitt. I don't know. All I'm saying is it's interesting to look. 2 guys that were on the same path made different decisions. One guy stayed on the path. One guy made a decision to go elsewhere. And it's interesting to look and see where they ended up. Now, it's funny because the more I thought about this, maybe Henry Parrish has it figured out. All right. Henry Parrish is now entering his 5th year of college. Okay. He's, for the last 3 years, 4 years, been getting NIL money. Right. While Israel Abanikanda played 3 years of college and he went off to the NFL. And now he's making NFL money. That's great, but that's like a real job in the NFL, Whereas Henry Parrish is living the college life for a 5th year. He's getting paid NIL, and he's living. I mean, college is awesome. College is awesome without any real responsibilities. I mean, you have a lot of obligations and responsibilities with football. But I mean, it's not the real world. You're not living in the real world. You're getting paid like you're in the real world. You're getting paid a real world salary, and you get to be in college again. Henry Parrish has it figured out. This is the move. Poor Henry Parrish. I say poor us. Would we all be so lucky to be living Henry Parrish's life of going to college for 5 years, getting paid to do it? I mean, way to go. That dude has it figured out. I mean, poor Izzy. Izzy Abanikanda should have stayed in college for 2 more years and gotten more NIL money and, gone on to, and enjoyed the college life a little bit longer. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of fun being a New York Jet, but college is college, man. Jeez. You don't want to skip that. All right. I think that's about it for it. Listen, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I mean, I just recorded this a second time to give you a good video. I mean, pray to God that this actually worked out. If this one didn't work out, you might not get a video tomorrow. You're going to get the squeaky voice chipmunk Max Headroom thing. But just re-recorded this. to give you a good video for today. So do me a favor and like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, where we have all of our Pitt video content. And of course, the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. To get all of your Pitt sports news, football, basketball, and recruiting. It's all right there, Panther-Lair.com. So check out the website, like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, do all those things, and I'll be very happy. And most of all, thanks for watching the video today. I really appreciate it. Glad you tuned in. I hope you had a great start to the week yesterday. Hope your Tuesday goes well. Enjoy it, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.